Welcome to the Case For. I'm your host, Matt Campobasso. Today, I want to talk about something that scares me a little bit. Not in a horror movie or jump scare kind of a way, but in a this hits a little bit too close to home kind of a way. It's that sinking feeling you get when your brain replays moments that you're not proud of, maybe from last week, maybe from 15 years ago. And you wonder, is that who I am to that person? Or is that all I'll ever be? Maybe it's the night you lost your temper. Maybe it's the decision you made that blew up a relationship. Maybe it's a lie that you told or the thing you covered up. That thing you didn't do when it really mattered. And now there's this fear. Am I now frozen in that moment in their mind? Is that my permanent file? Has that book on me been written for that person or those people? I've absolutely felt that. I have felt it as a partner, as a dad, as a friend, as a lawyer, and mostly just as a human who messes things up. I've also been on the other side of it, where I've reduced people to their worst moments. Thankfully, as I've gotten older, I tend to do that a lot less. But in my 20s, I loved judging and labeling people. I think it's part of just not knowing what the world looks like yet or how the world works. Looking at somebody and saying, he lied or she cheated or they bailed or that's just who they are. And then you kind of close that file and you write somebody off as if their story is over. But today, I want to make the case for not reducing people to their worst moments or decisions. That includes other people, and it very much includes you. And to help us frame this, I want to talk about one of the smartest TV shows about morality that we've had in a long time, and quite honestly, maybe ever. That show is called The Good Place. And The Good Place, which aired years ago, stars Kristen Bell and an incredible cast. And it focuses on essentially heaven and hell. For purposes of today's episode, I want to talk about the point system that is featured in much of The Good Place, what it gets wrong and what it gets very, very right. So let's see if we can make a case here for seeing people, including ourselves, as stories and not screenshots. Let me start personally. There are more than a handful of moments in my life that I wish I could go back and edit them out of my timeline. Not the minor ones like I wore the wrong shirt to a party. I mean the moments, the real ones, the messy ones where I was less the person that I want to be. Where I snapped at somebody because I was stressed and I made it about them. Or where I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. Or where I lied or concealed something because it was easier than facing the truth. Those moments where I showed up as the worst version of myself to my kids. And my brain, being very generous, loves to replay those on a loop at midnight or 2 a.m. when I wake up and I can't fall back asleep. And part of that pain isn't just the regret, but it's the story that I have built around it. They see me as that version of who I am. That's who I am to them. That's my label. And if I'm not careful, that becomes the story I tell about myself. I'm the guy who screwed this up. I'm the dad who fails. I'm the friend who wasn't there. Full stop. Case closed. I don't know if you do that, but I'm going to guess that you do, even if you've never said it out loud. And here's the quiet tragedy. We hate being reduced to our worst moments, but we also do it to other people all the time. It's kind of like flattening people. It's efficient, right? Life is busy. People are complex. You don't have time to hold 500 pages of someone else's story in your head. So your brain tries to make it simple. She's selfish. He's unreliable. He's a cheater. She's a liar. They're dramatic. He's the one who betrayed me. She's the one who left. We take one season or one set of decisions or even one catastrophic moment, and we let that stand in for the idea of the whole person. We do this in our families. We do this at work. We do it in friend circles. We absolutely do it online. And honestly, some of that comes from pain. When someone hurts you, it's safer to believe that that's all that they are. If it makes it easier for you to keep your distance, then it feels justified. And what it does is it takes a complex human story and turns it into a clean story. This person is bad. This person is the villain. The end. Sometimes that's a boundary, a necessary one. Sometimes it's self-protection. Sometimes it's a way to avoid feeling our own grief or disappointment. But here's the problem. Once you've reduced someone to their worst moment, you've stopped being curious about who they're becoming. We close the file. No new evidence is allowed. And when we do that to ourselves, it's even worse. We decide, I blew up my marriage, so I'm unlovable. I lost that job, so I'm a failure. I hurt my kid, so I'm a bad parent. I lied or cheated, so I'm untrustworthy. And then no matter what we do afterwards, no matter how we grow, the story doesn't change. We become our own judge, jury, and jailer. Which brings me to The Good Place. If you haven't seen The Good Place, here's the quick version with as few spoilers as possible. When people die, they either go to the good place or the bad place based on a point system. Every action in your life earns or loses points. You help someone, you get points. You hurt someone, you lose points. You eat a sandwich that indirectly supports an evil corporation, you lose points. You rescue puppies, you get points. It's this massive moral algorithm that adds up everything you've ever done. And if your score is high enough, welcome to the good place. If it's not, off to the bad place. It's a really clever comedy premise and also a brutal version of what a lot of us subconsciously believe. I'm the sum of my actions. My life is a ledger. Good on one side, bad on the other. May the best pile win. But the show does something brilliant. At some point, the characters discover that no one has made it to the good place in centuries, literally zero people. And that's not because everyone all of a sudden became an evil mastermind. It's because life got more complicated. You buy a tomato, and somewhere down the chain, that purchase is connected to environmental harm, worker exploitation, corporate greed, all of these unintended consequences you had no idea about. Even your good action is tangled in a web of things that you can't control. The point that the show makes is you can't actually reduce a human life to a simple point total. The world is too complex. People are too complex. And as the show goes on, something even more important emerges. People become better because of relationships and truth-telling and second chances and being called out and called up and being given the chance to grow and not written off. They don't improve because someone says, you're at negative 5,000 points, get it together. They improve because someone sees them as more than their worst version of themselves and walks with them while they become someone new. That's the deeper wisdom of The Good Place. We are not static totals. We are dynamic stories. And guess what? The same is true in real life. I want to say something very directly to you for a minute. There's a difference between I did something terrible and I am terrible. There's a difference between I hurt someone and I am nothing but the person who hurts people. There's a difference between I made a selfish decision and I am selfish, full stop. You have chapters in your story you'd probably want to burn. So do I, a lot of them. But guess what? A chapter is not the whole book. And I'm not saying this to let anyone, including myself, off the hook. Actions have consequences. Some doors, they don't reopen. Some relationships don't come back. Some harm can't be undone with a sorry and a hug. This isn't about erasing impact. It's about refusing to believe that the absolute worst thing you did is the truest thing about you. Because if you believe that, you're going to live down to it. Shame loves that story. Shame says, you are your worst moment. This is the real you. Everything else is fake or a performance, or you're pretending. And once we buy that, why would we even try to grow? Why show up differently? Why apologize? Why make amends? Why do that slow, boring work of becoming more kind or more careful or more honest? If you're already sentenced in your own mind, rehabilitation feels pointless. So part of this case is giving yourself permission to say, yeah, I did do that. And also, that's not the end of who I am. So now the harder part, because for most of us, it's easier to extend theoretical grace to ourselves than it is to extend practical grace to the people who have hurt us. So let me be very clear up front. Not reducing someone to their worst moment, it does not mean pretending it didn't happen or ignoring the damage they caused, removing all boundaries, letting unsafe people back into your life, or doing the emotional labor for someone who refuses to grow. You can forgive someone and still keep distance. You can see their humanity and still say, I can't be in that relationship with you. And you can wish them well and then also not text them back. But somewhere inside you, in the way that you hold them in your mind, there's a choice. Do I freeze frame them as the worst moment of their lives or their worst decision forever? Or do I stop and allow for the possibility that they might be more than that moment? You may never see their growth. You may never get the apology you deserve. You may never trust them again. But there is a quiet kind of freedom in saying, what you did is not okay. I'm protecting myself. And also, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life telling myself the story that you are nothing but the sum of your worst acts. Why? Because holding someone permanently in that role, it actually keeps you stuck too. It keeps you anchored to that season, that pain, that version of who you were that was hurt. In The Good Place, one of the most powerful things that the characters do for each other is revise their judgments over time. I thought you were just selfish, but I do see you trying. I thought you were hopeless, but you're learning. I thought you were a lost cause, but I can see you growing. Again, TV show, neat, tidy arcs, life is messier, but the underlying posture here is something we can steal. Update your file on people, including yourself, when new evidence shows up, and keep the record open to allow for new evidence. That doesn't mean erasing the past. It means letting that story about others or yourself continue. Next, I want to talk about why we reduce people and why it costs us. It's worth asking, right? Why do we do this? Why do we reduce people to their worst moments in the first place? A few reasons. Simplicity. It's easier to live in a world divided into good people and bad people than it is to hold the tension that everyone is a mix of both. Protection. If I decide you're bad, I don't have to grapple with the parts of you that were good to me or the version of me that loved you. I can wall you off. Control. Labeling people, even internally, gives us a feeling of control. We know where to file them, we know what their story is, and how to deal with that on a day-to-day basis when we encounter them. Lastly, pain. When someone hurts us, reducing them to that moment is a way to honor our pain. But in a twisted way, it actually locks us into that scene forever. The cost of this, though, it is huge. We become suspicious of the idea that people can actually grow. We don't notice when someone starts to change. We become cynical about our own capacity for redemption. Or we live in a constant state of low-grade judgment of ourselves and of others. It's like walking around with a pocket-sized version of the Good Place scoreboard in your head, constantly scanning good, bad, in, out, forever. That's a lot to carry. So what do we do with all of this? I want to offer a few concrete, small practices, nothing grand, just tiny shifts in how we talk, think, and relate. And as I said on prior episodes, you don't have to take any of these. You definitely don't have to take all of them. But if one moves the needle for you, then I'm glad I'm sharing. The first thing you can do is change is to did. When you're telling a story about someone who hurt you, try shifting the language, even if you're just doing that in your own head. Instead of he is a liar, try he lied to me in that moment and it hurt. Instead of saying she is selfish, try she acted selfishly in that moment and there were consequences. That tiny language shift, it doesn't excuse anything. It puts truth to the moment and the bad behavior. But guess what it also does? It leaves the door open just a crack to the idea that that person is more than just that moment. Number 2, let new evidence count. If someone has consistently shown up differently for a long time, if they've apologized, made amends, changed their patterns, ask yourself, have I updated my internal story about this person at all? Or am I still holding them frozen from 2018? You're not obligated to reconcile or trust, but you are allowed to say they're not who they were when that happened. Third, offer yourself these same courtesies. Think about the moment in your life that you most regret. I'm thinking about mine right now. And ask, if someone I love did that, would I believe it erased every good thing about them? Or would I try to understand and allow them the dignity of growth? What would it look like if you extended that same dignity to yourself? Maybe it sounds like, I really hurt someone, and I'm working on making amends and being different now. That moment of my life is part of my story, but it is absolutely not the whole story. Next, I want to ask you to stay curious instead of final. When you catch yourself saying that's just who they are, pause and ask, is that fully true? Or is that who they were in that moment when they really hurt me? You don't have to go any further than that. Just stay a little curious. Refuse to slam the door all the way shut in your own mind. So let me land this like I might land a closing argument in a courtroom, but with a little bit more heart and a little bit less law. The world will absolutely try to turn you into your worst moment. Trust me, I have experienced it. The internet is built to be a screenshot of your lowest day or your lowest decisions and hold it up forever. Families, workplaces, friend circles, we all keep unofficial scorecards. And you, like me, may have done things that you are genuinely not proud of. You may have hurt people that you authentically love. There may be parts of your story that will always carry sorrow. We don't need to pretend otherwise. But here's what I believe, and what I want you to hear from me as clearly as I can say it. You are not the sum of your worst decisions. You are not the headline of your lowest day. You are a story that is still being written. And that's true for other people too. It doesn't mean everyone gets access to you. It doesn't mean that you erase consequences. And it doesn't mean you hand your heart back to someone who hasn't changed. It just means that you refuse to live in a universe where a human being, any human being, can be fully captured and defined by their worst decisions. In The Good Place, the whole scoring system breaks down because it cannot account for complexity, content, growth, influence, trauma, intention, repair, redemption. Real life is like that too. Every single one of us is walking around as an unfinished draft. Some pages are ugly, some are beautiful, some are going to show genuine change, and some need a ton of editing still. But if you only ever judge people, including yourself, by the worst paragraph or page, you're going to miss the entire point of the book. So this week, and as we head into the new year, try this. When your brain replays your worst moment, answer it with, yeah, that happened, but I'm more than that. When you talk about someone who's hurt you, experiment with softer internal language that leaves room for their humanity, even if you're never going to see them again. And when you're tempted to write someone off entirely, remember, they're a living story that I don't have all the pages to. You don't owe anyone reconciliation, but you do owe yourself the freedom that comes from not carrying around a mental prison for everyone who's ever hurt you. You are not your worst moment. They are not theirs. And if there's any hope for redemption, personal, relational, spiritual, it starts with that belief. If this stirred something up in you about yourself or about someone else, maybe take a minute after this episode to write down the moment you've been defining yourself by, and then write one line about who you're trying to be now. And if you think you know someone who might need this, please feel free to share this with them, not as a weapon, but as an invitation. Hey, this made me think about how we see ourselves and each other. Thought you might like it. Thank you for listening, and also thank you for being willing to take a look at the mess and not just the highlights. I'll see you next time on The Case For. Take care.